Alright guys, welcome back to Math 4. Today is July 23rd, and we're still talking about how to solve quadratics. We're going to do today factoring when a does not equal 1, and we're also going to go ahead and tackle the quadratic formula. Again, these should both be review, so it really shouldn't be too bad. Alright, so first, when a does not equal 1, right? We use the jump the cow method. This is also called the AC method if you want to look it up online on your own. Alright, so we're just going to dive right into an example because you guys know how to do this, right? So example 1, we've got here 20x squared minus 11x minus 3 equals 0. So again, remember, it has to equal 0 in order to solve by factoring because we're using that zero product property, okay? So here there's a number in front of x squared. First thing I'm going to do is see if I can factor it out. Does 20 go into 11? No. And I'll say, all right, is there a GCF, a number that goes into 20, 11, and 3? No, they're all relatively prime. So that lets me know I'm going to have to go ahead here and jump the cow. All right, so what's that going to look like? To jump the cow, the first thing we do is we go ahead and we multiply these two numbers together and replace the 3. All right, so this is going to become here x squared minus 11x minus 60. All right, so that was our first step. We jumped the cow. All right, now we're going to go ahead and say we factor just like normal, right? Because now a equals 1. So what two numbers multiply to give me negative 60, but add up to negative 11? Okay, so that here is going to be x minus 15, x plus 4. All right. Now here we have to compensate for the fact that we jumped the cow. So we jumped the cow. Here this is called milking the cow, so that's how we get the negative 15 and the 4. And now we're going to go ahead, we're going to slide under the cow. So to do that, we divide by the number out front of the original problem. So 20 here, right? Now I'm going to go ahead. Always reduce these fractions. You must reduce these fractions. So here 15 over 20 is going to reduce to x minus 3/4. And then 4 over 20 is going to reduce to x minus 1/5. Okay? Now here what we can do is we're going to take this 4 and we're going to slide it out front. We're going to take this 5, we're going to slide it out front. Okay? And we end up with 4x minus 3 times 5x minus 1. Now I can solve both of these, right? If you need to, write yourself two equations, set them equal to 0, right? You can do 4x minus 3 equals 0. You'll add 3 to each side. You'll get 4x equals 3. Then we'll divide each side by 4. And we find that x equals 3/4. All right. Now you may notice here, right? Technically, this is the full factored expression for what we had on the left, right? But look here, x minus 3/4, and the answer was 3/4. So we can kind of use that as a shortcut here. X minus 1/5, I know the other answer is going to be 1/5. Okay? And I can check that, right? If I go ahead and set 5x minus 1 equals 0, I'll add 1 to each side. I'll get 5x equals 1. I'll divide each side by 5, and I get x equals 1/5. So you can kind of see you're going to get the same thing no matter how you go about it. Okay? So let's take a look at one more jump the cow. We're going to look at one that's just a little bit more complicated. Not too bad. We're going to do here example 2, 18x squared. We'll do plus 2 equals 12x. Okay, so this is another example. All right. So again, first thing, it's got to equal 0, right? So if it's got to equal 0, I got to move that 12x to the other side. I'm going to subtract 12x from each side. Because remember, I want that 18x squared to be positive, all right? So if I do that, I'm going to end up with 18x squared minus 12x plus 2 equals 0. Now I say to myself, wait a second, 18, 12, and 2, they're all divisible by 2. So let's go ahead and divide everything by 2. I'm going to get 9x squared minus 6x plus 1 equals 0. And now I can jump the cow. All right, so I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to multiply 9 over here. I get x squared minus 6x plus 9 equals 0. Two numbers that multiply to give me 9, but add up to 6, negative 6. It's going to be x minus 3 times x minus 3 equals 0. Now remember, I still have to slide under the cow. It's what most students miss here. So I divide by 9. Divide by 9. These both reduce to 1/3. So I'm going to end up with here x minus 1/3 times x minus 1/3 equals 0. Slide the 3's out front. You get 3x minus 1 times 3x minus 1. And look, since they're both the same factor, they're both going to give me the same solution. So my solution set, I'm just going to write it once, right? I'm going to end up with 1/3, right? I just use my little shortcut where I looked up here. Okay? Please make sure you complete factoring with the slide under the cow step, even if you're going to go ahead and use that shortcut. That way I can still see you've got everything right. Because if it's not an equation, you still have to slide under the cow in order to finish factoring. All right? So let's jump the cow. All right? Again, please go ahead and email me if you have any questions. All right. Second method we're going to look at today is going to be solving by the quadratic formula. Okay? So method 2 is the quadratic formula. Now, a lot of teachers will just go ahead and let you do the whole quadratic formula, right? X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a, right? And you've heard all the different songs to help you remember that. If not, go to YouTube. There's a million of them, all right? So make sure you know that formula. Don't forget it. I like to break it down in 2 steps. I like to first determine what's called the discriminant. The discriminant is equal to b squared minus 4ac. You'll notice that's the part that's here underneath the square root symbol, okay? This is where most students make a mistake when doing this by hand, and you should be practicing this by hand. Use a calculator to check your math, but make sure you're doing it by hand, okay? Once I figure this out, then my quadratic formula simplifies to just x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of the discriminant all over 2a, okay? I'm less likely to make a mistake doing this after I found the discriminant. The other reason I like to find the discriminant is because it's going to tell me what type of solutions to expect, right? So here, if d is greater than 0, right, I'm going to go ahead and get 2 real solutions. If d equals 0, I'm going to get 1 rational solution, but that means you could have factored it. So this shouldn't happen, right? Because given the choice, you always want to factor. It's easier. Now, if d is less than 0, remember from Algebra 2, you're going to get 2 complex solutions. What that means is I is going to be in your answer, okay? So let's go ahead and take a look at 2 examples of this real quick, all right? So example number 1, we're going to go ahead and do here 4x squared plus 6x plus 9 equals 0. So again, in order to do quadratic formula, the equation also still has to equal 0. So always make sure your equation equals 0 to start. A is always the number in front of x squared. B is always the number in front of x. And C is always your constant term. All right? So I'm going to find the discriminant. D equals b squared minus 4ac. So I'm going to substitute. This is 6 squared minus 4 times 4 times 9. All right. I'm going to get here 36 minus 144. Yeah. All right. Now if I go ahead and subtract those, I know I'm going to get a negative number. So because I'm going to get a number less than 0, I'm going to expect 2 complex solutions. So what is 36 minus 144? 108? Sounds good to me. All right. I don't know if that's right or not. We'll find out. Okay. So now I can go ahead here and I can find x. X will equal negative b plus or minus the square root of d, the whole thing over 2a. Okay. So here, negative b, the opposite of whatever this number is here. Here it's a positive 6. The opposite of positive 6 is negative 6. Right? So we read that as the opposite of b. If it was a negative 6, this would become a positive 6. All right? Plus or minus the square root of 108. I'm sorry, negative 108. My apologies. All over 2 times a. So 2 times 4 is 8. Okay? Now here, I expect you to clean this up, right? As soon as I see this as a negative, I'm going to break it up into 2 fractions. All right? So I'm just going to go ahead and continue down here. Right? We're going to have here negative 6 over 8 plus or minus. Now because it's negative, I'm going to go ahead and put an I over here. I'm going to have 8 on the bottom. Now the square root of 108, you guys know how to do this. You learn how to do this in geometry. Do a little scratch work. Right? There's nothing bad about that. 108, I can break that down to the square root of 36 times the square root of 3. Square root of 36 is 6. So I get 6 root 3. This will be 6 root 3 over 8. Now I need to reduce both these fractions. Negative 6 over 8 is going to be negative 3/4 plus or minus. 6 over 8 again reduces to 3/4. And there's my answer. Now usually we get 2 answers, so recognize here, plus and minus are 2 different answers. I have negative 3/4 plus 3 root 3 over 4i, and I have negative 3/4 minus 3 root 3 over 4i. I'm sure my hand got in the way and you couldn't really see that. All right. So that's how the quadratic formula works. Again, that's a worst case scenario where you're getting an imaginary solution. That one's pretty hard. So we're going to take a look at one that's just a little bit easier. All right. So here, our last example for this. We're going to have here x squared minus 3x equals negative 1. All right. So first thing I'm going to do here, actually let's go ahead and let's make it a positive one. Why not? We'll get crazy with it. All right. So first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to switch this to the other side. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and subtract 1 from each side. All right. I'm going to get x squared minus 3x minus 1 equals 0. So now I can go ahead and I can write this all out, right? A is 1, B is negative 3, and C is negative 1. So now we're going to have some negative numbers, and that's fine. We can handle that, all right? So D equals B squared minus 4AC, right? Use your parentheses. Negative 3 squared minus 4 times 1 times negative 1, okay? Now I'm going to go ahead. Negative 3 squared. A negative times a negative is a positive 9. I'll know you're using your calculator because if you type in negative 3 squared without the parentheses, you're going to get negative 9. It's going to mess you up. Now watch what happens here. A negative 4 times a negative 1 is a positive, so those both become plus, right? 2 negatives make a positive. 4 times 1 is 4. 9 plus 4 is 13. So because D is positive, I'm expecting 2 real solutions. All right, they're going to be irrational. So now x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of d all over 2a. Please notice I'm writing the formula every time up top. I'm less likely to make a mistake. All right, so here I end up with x equals negative b. So the opposite of negative 3 is positive 3. Okay, so remember here it's a negative 3. Here it's a positive 3. That means the opposite of b, okay? Plus or minus the square root of 13 all over 2 times a, which in this case is just 2 times 1, 2. All right? Now here, there's nothing to simplify. There's no I, so I don't have to break up into 2 fractions, right? That's just my answer, right? So my solution is x equals 3 plus or minus the square root of 13 all over 2. And again, there's 2 solutions there, right? I've got 3 plus the square root of 13 over 2 and 3 minus the square root of 13 over 2. All right, so that's how we solve using quadratic formula. I should not be getting decimal answers for these. If you guys are giving me decimals, it means you're using a calculator. Please don't do that. Only use a calculator to check your answer when you're done. All right? Go ahead and email me if you have any questions.